The arena lights dimmed and a hush fell over the crowd as Paul Heyman stepped into that ring on Monday Night Raw, and what he had to say about Seth Rollins sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling world that nobody saw coming. Before we dive into this explosive moment that has everyone talking, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss what happens next in this unfolding drama. Heyman stood there with that signature smirk on his face, microphone in hand, ready to address the elephant in the room that had been building for weeks, and Seth Rollins was watching from backstage with fire in his eyes. The tension had been brewing ever since that fateful night when everything changed between these two forces in professional wrestling, and now Paul Heyman was finally ready to speak his truth about the situation that left Seth Rollins blindsided and betrayed. The Advocate stepped through those ropes with the confidence of a man who knew exactly what he was about to unleash, and the WWE Universe held its collective breath waiting to hear what would come out of his mouth. Heyman has always been known as the master of the microphone, the man who can twist words into weapons and turn a simple promo into an event that people talk about for years to come, and this particular night was going to be no different as he prepared to dissect the relationship between himself and the Visionary. Seth Rollins had every right to feel the way he felt because the history between these two men ran deeper than most people realized, and when Heyman began speaking about their past, you could see the emotion building in Rollins as he watched from the monitor backstage. The Advocate talked about the trust that had been built over time, the strategic alliance that had formed when circumstances brought them together, and how professional wrestling is a business where loyalty only lasts as long as it benefits both parties involved. He spoke with the eloquence of a man who had been in this industry for decades, who had seen alliances form and crumble, who had witnessed betrayals that made this one look tame in comparison, and he made it clear that what happened between him and Seth Rollins was simply the natural evolution of their relationship. The cameras cut to Seth Rollins backstage and the expression on his face told a story that words could never fully capture because this was a man who had been stabbed in the back by someone he thought he could rely on. The Visionary stood there watching Heyman speak, his jaw clenched tight, his fists balled up at his sides, and you could see the wheels turning in his head as he processed every single word that came out of the Advocate's mouth. Rollins had always been someone who wore his emotions on his sleeve, someone who let the world see exactly what he was feeling, and in that moment the cameras captured pure rage mixed with disappointment and a burning desire for retribution. Heyman continued his speech by explaining that in the world of professional wrestling, personal relationships take a backseat to professional opportunities, and when the chance came to align himself with a different force in the company, he took it without hesitation because that's what smart businessmen do. He talked about how Seth Rollins should have seen this coming, how the Visionary should have known that Paul Heyman's loyalty has always been to whoever provides him with the best opportunity to be at the top of the mountain. The Advocate painted himself as a pragmatist, a realist, someone who understands that sentimentality has no place in a cutthroat industry where championships and main event spots are the only currency that matters. The WWE Universe in attendance that night was divided in their reaction because some fans understood exactly what Heyman was saying while others booed him out of the building for what he had done to Seth Rollins. The heat in that arena was real, the kind of authentic emotion that you can't manufacture or script, and it all stemmed from the genuine investment that people had in this storyline that had been unfolding before their eyes. Heyman fed off that energy like the veteran performer he is, using the boos and jeers to fuel his promo and drive home his points with even more venom and conviction. Seth Rollins couldn't take it anymore and the camera showed him storming through the backstage area, pushing past crew members and staff as he made his way toward the entrance ramp. The Visionary was done watching from afar, done sitting back and letting Paul Heyman control the narrative, and he was ready to confront the Advocate face to face in the middle of that ring. Security personnel tried to intercept him, but Rollins was a man possessed, a competitor who had reached his breaking point and wasn't going to let anyone stand between him and the man who had wronged him so publicly and so brutally. But before Seth Rollins could make it to the ring, something unexpected happened that changed the entire trajectory of the segment and left everyone wondering what would come next. Heyman's words took a turn as he started talking about the future rather than the past, about new alliances that had been formed and new directions that his career was taking. He mentioned names that made the crowd erupt in speculation, he hinted at plans that were bigger than anyone could have imagined, and he made it crystal clear that his decision to turn his back on Seth Rollins was just the beginning of something much larger. The production team kept cutting back to Seth Rollins, who had been stopped just short of the entrance curtain, held back by multiple security guards who were desperately trying to prevent him from interrupting Heyman's promo. The frustration on Rollins' face was evident as he struggled against the people holding him back, screaming at them to let him go, demanding the opportunity to get his hands on Paul Heyman right then and there. His voice echoed through the backstage area as he shouted things that the microphones couldn't quite pick up clearly, but the intensity and anger were unmistakable. Heyman wrapped up his speech by addressing Seth Rollins directly, looking into the camera with those calculating eyes and telling the Visionary that he should have been smarter, should have seen the writing on the wall, and should have known that in this business you can't trust anyone completely. He said that Rollins had become complacent, had started believing his own hype, and had forgotten that in professional wrestling you're only as valuable as your last big moment. The Advocate's final words cut deep as he suggested that maybe Seth Rollins wasn't as visionary as he claimed to be, maybe he was just another wrestler who couldn't see the bigger picture, and maybe that's why he found himself on the outside looking in while Paul Heyman aligned himself with true greatness. The segment ended with Heyman dropping the microphone and walking out of the ring with his head held high, completely unbothered by the hostile reaction from the crowd or the fact that Seth Rollins was backstage ready to tear him apart. The camera stayed on the Advocate as he walked up the ramp, never once looking back, never once showing any signs of regret or second thoughts about what he had just said. It was vintage Paul Heyman, a man who had just lit a fire that was going to burn through Monday Night Raw for weeks and possibly months to come. The aftermath of this confrontation has created ripples throughout the entire roster because everyone knows that when Seth Rollins is angry and motivated, he becomes one of the most dangerous competitors in the entire company. The Visionary has a history of taking personal issues and turning them into career-defining feuds, and there's no doubt that what Paul Heyman said on that episode of Raw has set the stage for something explosive. Fans have been buzzing on social media ever since that segment aired, debating whether Heyman was right in his assessment of Rollins, discussing what this means for both men moving forward, and speculating about who Heyman might be aligning himself with now that he's cut ties with the Visionary. What makes this situation even more compelling is the fact that both men have legitimate points in this conflict because Paul Heyman is right that professional wrestling is a business where opportunities must be seized, but Seth Rollins is also justified in feeling betrayed by someone he trusted. This isn't a simple good versus bad scenario, it's a complex situation where both individuals have their own motivations and their own reasons for doing what they did. The gray area is what makes this storyline so engaging, what makes people want to tune in every single week to see how it develops and where it ultimately leads. The production values during this segment were top-notch, with the cameras capturing every emotional beat, every subtle expression, and every powerful moment that made this promo segment feel significant. The way they cut between Heyman in the ring and Rollins backstage created a dynamic viewing experience that kept audiences on the edge of their seats, wondering when these two would finally come face to face and what would happen when they did. The audio mixing was perfect, allowing viewers to hear every word that Heyman spoke while also catching the raw emotion in Seth Rollins' reactions when the cameras found him backstage. Moving forward, the questions on everyone's mind are how Seth Rollins will respond, what his next move will be, and whether he'll be able to get his hands on Paul Heyman for some measure of revenge. The Visionary has always been someone who fights his battles in the ring rather than just with words, and it's only a matter of time before he gets that opportunity. The WWE creative team has set up something special here, a feud that has layers and depth and real emotional stakes that go beyond just two people fighting over a championship or a spot on the card. This entire situation has reminded everyone why Paul Heyman is considered one of the greatest minds in professional wrestling history and why Seth Rollins remains one of the most captivating performers on the roster. Their chemistry, even in conflict, is undeniable, and the way this story is unfolding has all the hallmarks of a classic wrestling feud that people will remember for years to come. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on every twist and turn in this developing story, because if the segment taught us anything, it's that in professional wrestling, expect the unexpected and always be ready for the next explosive moment that changes everything.